Between the pandemic and selling our home and moving, like a lot of you, we haven't been able to travel as freely as we'd like. But last summer we did take the motorhome to Oregon for an upgrade to our shocks. During that trip, we took 2 side trips, one to the Oregon coast and one to Crater Lake. One of the things we learned while in Oregon is that you can't always get where you want to go in a straight line. Case in point, getting from Grants Pass, Oregon, where we were staying, to the Oregon coast. If you look on this map, you'll see there's no direct route between them, since the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest is kind of in the way. So you either have to go north, then west, then south, or go south, then west, and north toward the coast. Going this way necessitates a dip into California. Since this was the shorter of the 2 options, that's what we did. We decided to head for Harris Beach State Park, about 2 hours from the RV park in Grants Pass. With Phoebe safe in the motorhome, we headed out. The drive was pretty straightforward, but be aware that many of the roads in this area have 1 lane each direction with a lot of twists and turns. The Oregon coast was truly beautiful, and we spent a couple of pleasant hours at the state park. While we obviously didn't camp there, you can find lots of information regarding RV sites, tent camping, yurts, hiking, tide pool exploration, and so much more. I've put the links in the description. We were there in July, and frankly it was cold. While the sky was clear and sunny, the wind just howled around us. So if you're expecting a sunny, warm, beachy experience at the Oregon coast, you might be a little disappointed. But we do recommend a visit, if only to see the rugged beauty of the coastline. On our way back to Grants Pass, we came upon the Jedediah Smith Redwoods State Park. Situated right off US 199 in Northern California, it's about 9 miles east of Crescent City. We literally stumbled across this little gem, and so were quite unprepared to explore it, but what we did see was breathtaking. We're in like a grove of redwoods, and I don't know what this tree is, but it's gorgeous. It's like a fairyland in here. This old-growth redwood grove has been hit with wildfires probably more than once. Redwood trees are surprisingly resistant to fire, and many do survive them. The reason is because redwoods have thick bark with vertical grooves running the length of the tree. A couple of these trees just really got hit by fire.
So they got burned, but it's still alive?
It's this thick bark structure that helps protect the vital inner core of the tree, allowing it to live through the fire. Oh my goodness. Oh, this beautiful old tree. Look at this. I am not going in there. Just saying. No. He's going in there. Get out of the tree. You're not supposed to be in the tree. After returning home, we discovered much more about this park simply by doing a quick Google search. There is camping available there, although with the recent fires and the pandemic, be sure to check that before going. And I will put the links in the description. Now, if you've followed us for any length of time, you know we like to know the story behind the sites we come across. Since this park is called Jedediah Smith Redwoods State Park, we naturally wondered, who is Jedediah Smith? Well, it turns out he was a pretty interesting mountain man and explorer that was almost forgotten and lost from history. Jed Smith was born in what is now Bainbridge, New York in 1799. Like many families at that time, they were not wealthy, and young Jedediah had to learn to work early. At 13, he worked as a clerk on a freighter in Lake Erie. In this environment, he would have met traders and trappers coming and going and heard their tales of exploration and adventure. He was mentored by Dr. Titus Simons, a pioneer medical doctor that was acquainted with the Smith family. It is speculated that Dr. Simons gave the young Jedediah a copy of Lewis and Clark's 1814 book, The Lewis and Clark Expedition, and legend says that Jedediah carried that book with him on all his travels. In 1822, at the age of 23, and now a strapping 6 feet tall, Jed joined an expedition to explore and trap in the Rocky Mountains. The expedition finally reached the Yellowstone River in October and continued on to Montana, where they spent the winter fur trapping. In the spring of 1823, Jedediah was among the first Euro-Americans to see the Black Hills. They explored what is now South Dakota and eastern Wyoming. At some point that spring, they needed fresh horses, and they also needed directions to continue exploring westward. For that, they turned to the Native American Crow tribe. But in the process of searching for them, Jed was attacked by a grizzly bear. According to witnesses, the bear mauled him severely, but didn't kill him. He sustained several broken ribs and a large gash from his right eye to his right ear. His men wanted to take him to a doctor, but Jed wouldn't hear of it. Instead, he directed his friend Jim Kleiman to sew the gash together. He wore his hair long on the right side of his head for the rest of his life to cover those scars. Jedediah continued his exploration and fur trapping for about another 10 years. In May of 1831, he was leading a group along the Santa Fe Trail near what is now southwest Kansas. He left the group to scout for water and never returned, and his body was never recovered. Some of his belongings were later found, and it appeared he'd been killed by some members of the Comanche tribe. Even in his short 10 years of exploring, wherever he traveled through the American West, Jedediah made maps. In fact, he and his partners, Jackson and Sublette, created maps that are credited for creating the most accurate Pacific West maps and are considered a landmark in the mapping of the American West. Some even say more important than Lewis and Clark. He was almost forgotten until some of his writings were brought to light in 1912, and in 1929, this area of the Redwoods was named after him. You'll find links about this interesting explorer in the description. Our final destination before heading back to Utah was the one and only Crater Lake National Park. Since Grants Pass is only an hour and a half southwest of Crater Lake, we opted to make it a day trip and leave the RV and Phoebe in the RV park and drive the Jeep. You may already know that Crater Lake was formed 7,700 years ago when the then 12,000-foot-tall volcano Mount Mazama erupted. That eruption blew about 4,000 feet of rock and debris into the air and left a 2,000-foot deep pit in place of the peak. That pit is called a caldera. Over time, the caldera filled with water, and Crater Lake formed into what we see today. It was a gorgeous day. A lot of the snow had melted, and the lake was simply beautiful. And speaking of snow, did you know that Crater Lake is one of the snowiest places in the country? It gets around 43 feet of snow a year. In fact, snow and rain are the only sources of water going into Crater Lake. That's what gives it the deep, beautiful blue color. But did you also know that they really don't understand how water gets out of Crater Lake? The levels stay fairly constant at about 1,949 feet deep, the deepest lake in the United States and the 9th deepest in the world. Now, while there's some evaporation, scientists know that 2 million gallons of water seep out of the lake and into the caldera walls every hour. But where does that water go?
Crater Lake has been on my bucket list for a long time.
When I was in grade school, I remember learning about Crater Lake and wanting to visit it ever since. Now was my chance to not only see it, but to go down to the water's edge. I decided to hike the 2.2-mile Cleetwood Cove Trail down to the shoreline. The trail goes 700 feet down the side of the caldera, so it is steep and has switchbacks. The sign at the top says that it is strenuous and the equivalent of hiking up 65 flights of stairs, so be prepared and take water with you. There are signs reminding you to stay on the trail and not create shortcuts between the switchbacks, as this will cause erosion, especially during the spring snow melt. Also, be careful not to cause any loose rocks or other debris to roll down the slope, as this could end up hitting someone further down the trail. On your way down, you get some great views of the lake and can see how the currents create different colored lines in the lake. At the bottom of the trail, there is a dock normally used for tour boats and kayaks. Currently, the only boats allowed on the lake are those used by rangers and researchers. But you can see that some people brought swimsuits and went for a dip. Just know it's really cold. Historically, the water temperature in the summer is about 55 degrees. The last of the snow is still melting. As promised on the sign at the top, the hike back up is a lot harder. Take your time and enjoy the view of this unique lake.
The road around the lake is called Rim Drive, and we were fortunate it was open while we were there. It often doesn't open until June or July due to snow. We drove partway around the lake and stopped at one of the many pullouts, had lunch, and even met a new friend. Hi. You're a pretty bird. Go back up there. With COVID restrictions, most of the exhibits, restaurants, and buildings are closed. But we were able to find one gift shop that had the all-important National Park stamp and stickers. Once those were in hand, we headed back to Grants Pass and prepared to head home. It was a really long time ago.
It was.
It was like 6 months ago. This is now the end of January, and it really has taken us quite a while to get this video out, but let's talk about Crater Lake. You decided to do the hike. I did not do the hike. When it said it was like 65 stories to come back up, I said, not doing that. But how was it?
It was fine going down. You know, you do have to realize it is steep going down too. But then coming up, it's just a lot of work. You really start.
What about? Is there places to rest?
There's little benches, but you can rest on going down or coming up. You know, whichever way you need to. So when I was coming back up, I noticed there was this little chipmunk. And his mouth was already like totally stuffed full. And yet he was still working at putting more in.
And this was July, so he was
packing stuff up, getting ready for winter, I guess.
Back it up. Are you glad you did it?
Yeah. It was neat to get down there right next to the water, and you can see that you can see this from up above. You can see that there's different colors. By Wizard Island, on one section of it, there's like these bright greens and these yellows and stuff, and sort of aqua blue. And then when you get down there, you can see it. It's right there on the rocks. I guess there's a certain
bacterialgae or something.
Some kind of algae that particularly grows
Look
there.
it up. We don't know. We don't know what was causing different colors, but
and then there was these stripes of these colors, same kind of colors that were in the lake itself. I assume that's from currents.
Was it cold?
It was cold.
Did you touch it?
I touched it. Yeah, it was wet and it was cold.
We were glad we didn't take the motorhome up. Some people were driving motorhomes up, and
shorter ones than what
we would not recommend you do that. But then again, we're on the cautious side, so. You know, if you're more of the ilk that you can off-road, you can off-road with your motorhome, go right ahead. But we opted not to do that. Yeah. It was a good trip. We're glad we went. We kind of checked Oregon off on our list. So we're hoping for more stuff this spring and summer. So stay tuned, and we appreciate you taking the time to visit with us. And if you haven't already done so, Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
And press like and ring the bell to get notified.
You bet. And until then, you guys take care.
Bye.